Hi, everyone. Welcome. So excited to see you all here and be here with the incredible Stephany.
Hello.
Hi. We'll give everyone else a few moments to join, and I'm going to give a proper introduction to Stephany in a moment. But first, I want to welcome you all here officially. My name is Mallory. I am a co-founder of the Inheritance Project. This is your lunchtime episode of Inheritance Project Live, where we bring in incredible humans to share more about their background, their leadership lessons, and important, valuable information that you can take away and use in your life and work. If you are new to Inheritance Project, when we say inheritance, we're not talking about tax planning or just property or money or assets that pass from one generation to the next. We, contrary to what some people think, are not a tax firm. In fact, we are talking about everything that we've inherited from past generations that shape us and make us who we are. So that includes your culture, your beliefs, your ways of thinking, your ways of seeing the world, the social conditions that you were raised in. We don't choose our inheritance, but we can become empowered to understand all the ways that it shaped us, and by doing so, make more conscious choices about how we want to show up as leaders in the world. So at Inheritance Project, we offer leadership development, community building, and workshops and trainings to companies and organizations. And we love working with especially leaders who are looking to make a positive impact on the world. And you're probably here because you are one of those leaders. Maybe you are here because you are a leader in an organization and you want to become more aware of how your language may be impacting others and learn some really practical tips for how to be more inclusive with your language and make sure that it matches your intentions. Or maybe you're here because you're an entrepreneur or a coach and you want to make sure that the language you use with your teams and with the people you work with is really having the right impact on them and is going to work for all the diverse types of people who you care for and who you work with. Or maybe you're here because you work in an organization and you've unfortunately experienced the impact of language that is harmful or not inclusive, and you want to understand better how to address that and how to encourage better practices at your organization. So if any of those resonate with you, I'd love for you to write a yes in the comments. And if there are any other reasons why you're here and excited to hear from Stephany, I'd love to hear that in the comments too. Because of the way this stream is set up, we can't see you or your faces. So when you write things in the comments, it really helps us feel your energy and also guide the conversation. If you have any questions, follow-up remarks, we'd really love to hear from you. So write in the comments if there are any other reasons why you're excited to be here. And without further ado, I'm so thrilled to introduce you all to Stephany Poe. We actually only met recently. We were introduced by Talisha Joseph, who is here live, and she has an incredible platform called The Official Glue and helps people with their professional networking skills. And she is probably the most amazing networker that I've ever met, always connecting me with amazing humans like Stephany. And so even though we only met recently, Stephany made a huge impression on me at our first conversation with the depth of her wisdom, her insight, and the authentic and powerful way that she communicates. She has a really diverse professional background, from having a legal degree to working within organizations to now being the owner and founder of POEE Coaching and Consulting, and the soon to be best-selling author of her upcoming book, Perfect Progression. And she also has worked for a long time with women, coaching them to unlock their greatest potential. And so I can't do you fully justice with a short intro, but I'm really excited to welcome you here. And Stephany, is there anything else that you want to share about who you are or your background before we get into it?
I think you covered it. I think you covered it. I'm ready to jump in and get started because I'm super excited about this conversation. It's definitely needed, and I'm hoping to bring some different perspectives to the forefront. So I'm excited.
Great. Well, let's start by hearing a bit more about you. And I love to invite all of our guests to bring an object that is meaningful to your inheritance, your background or upbringing or identity in some way, and share the story behind it. So that's how I'd love for you to kick off.
Yes. So, some things that I've inherited, an object in particular, um, journaling. So my mother's mother, and many different people in my life have always written down their communication. And that's one of the things that I've inherited in my own life. I currently, right now, of course, with the book, but I've always written in my journals. And so, in my upbringing and the way that I saw things, it was safe to write your words, express your feelings, your thoughts on paper, because that was a way to identify with expression. There was no judgment. The papers didn't speak back, the papers didn't talk back to you. You can freely express your opinions without feeling less as if things were or people were against you. But in the process of doing that, I realized as I became older and working my way through my journey that that wasn't always the best form of communication. And the reason being is because when you write down your words, when you write and express your thoughts, they're not verbalized. And so, in order to help establish boundaries or even plan, you're giving off the perception, or at least I've given off the perception at one point in time, that I am not good at planning because I did not verbalize my thoughts. I did not add the wanted to do on a daily basis, whether it's to help out a coworker, whether it is to help out a friend. I've always just written it down. And so but I ended up doing so and ended up doing it very well. So that was one of the things that definitely inherited, which was communication when you can't verbalize the words that you've written down. And then in turn, of course, in verbalizing those, you also give off the perception of malicious intent or misleading behaviors. And that happens when a person is not verbalizing how they feel or verbalizing their thoughts. And there are many different ways you can verbalize your thoughts, especially in a workplace in a respectful manner that adds value and that actually helps a process or helps your teammates or your leaders become better today than they were yesterday. So once I was able to understand that verbalizing that's where the power is. Writing them down is great, but when you say them out loud, it is a completely different feeling and a completely different perception. And so I started to verbalize, and it was scary at first, but when I continued to verbalize those words, of course, I had the thoughts in my head: am I saying this okay? I hope this person is not taking this the wrong way. I hope that I can add the value here. And I just had to step out into that space and just really take charge and be comfortable in that space and in who I am as a person and also as a human being and a leader in this particular workspace and also in the personal space. So it was a duality there. So those were one of the things that I definitely inherited from my upbringing that helped create an identity.
Thank you so much, Stephany. I think you really illuminated so much there. One thing I want to highlight is that you had the blessing of being raised in an environment where you had this powerful self-awareness practice of journaling and being connected to your own thoughts and feelings and emotions. And you also talked about something that we often talk about in our work at Inheritance Project, which is sometimes what we inherited isn't enough to take us where we need to go into the future. And so, what do we need to do to transform or shift or work with that to enable us to be the type of leader that we want to be now? And it sounds like you went through that journey, moving from not just being aware and connected to your thoughts and feelings, but then learning how to actually express and share them with others. And I actually want to dig into this a little more because I know, especially in a workplace environment, there's so much at stake, right? Your performance reviews, your
Yeah.
potential promotion, the safety of your job. There's so many reasons why people feel afraid to share, their perceptions at work. And so I'm wondering what advice you would have to people who may be listening and feeling that like, oh, this sounds great. I want to be better at expressing my thoughts and speaking up for myself, but I'm afraid.
Okay. I think number one thing is becoming self aware. You have to understand who you are in that particular moment in time and also understand your behavior and behavior patterns. You can identify triggers in the moment. And anytime that there is an intense conversation, because I don't want to say angry or sad, they're intense. And the reason why they're intense is because your blood pressure raises, your heart races, your breath increases, your mind is racing. But this is where you have to take a few moments. I call it the 10-second rule. You breathe in for 10 seconds and you can do it quickly and quietly, but it gives your head time to catch up to your heart. And when you take that 10-second breath, you're actually able to understand where you are in the process and how you're feeling in that moment, in that conversation that's actually happening. And so, if you're ever in a moment where you feel as though I'm not sure if I should express this, um, take a look around you. Take a look at what's happening. Take a look, stop for a moment and take a look and see how can you improve this situation. No one will ever understand how you feel or ever know your thoughts if you do not express them. And you can express them in a respectful manner. You can express them in a professional manner. It's done all the time, even if it is a leader and even if it's vice versa. And so, standing in that space of awareness, self awareness, also helps you with creating definitive boundaries in the workspace. And those boundaries are extremely important because it also helps other people with how to approach you. And more importantly, how much they can give you and how much you can handle. They're learning your work style, they're learning your behaviors, they're learning who you are by putting those boundaries in place and also with you becoming very self-aware of your responses, your behavior, and your behavior patterns.
Thank you for that reminder that to pause and breathe. That's actually, we have this framework called 7 Skills for Challenging Conversations at Inheritance Project. And that's the number one skill that we teach is to pause, and a reminder that you don't need to rush into things. And sometimes you don't need to share right in that moment, but can find the appropriate time and place too. And taking that moment to stop and reflect and pause gives you the space to figure out the most effective path forward. And you talked about boundaries, and I know you've been on your own journey over the years of working through this. So I'd love for you to share with the people listening, how were you able to shift some of your own inherited patterns when it comes to work and start to integrate better or boundaries that better serve you in the workplace?
So, some boundaries that better serve me in the workplace. The first thing that I like to do is to remain open minded. I understand that I'm at a different level of awareness, self awareness. Some people say that I have a heightened sense of self awareness or a hypersense. But my intention behind any form of communication or any interaction with anyone is to always have a space for where individuals who come to me and allow me in their space to have it safe. I want people to be able to express their thinking, express their thoughts. Let's talk about things that are bothering you, or let's talk about these problems in the workplace that can be solved. And so, my intention behind that is to be open, honest, integrity, and also be prepared and ready to help them work through whatever issues that's happening in the current workplace. And so,
Mm.
that's the first thing I do. Come in open minded. The second thing I do is I allow them to speak as long as they need to, because listening is a huge part of communication. I think a lot of people forget that in order to understand another person, you have to openly listen to the specific words that are coming out of their mouth in order to piece together, piece together the story that they're telling, so you can have the visual for them, or at least you can be on the same page with their visual in their mind. And then as you regurgitate or either repeat what they said using different words, because that's also a way of letting them know you understood exactly what it is that they said, what their pain points are,
Mm.
and where they're coming from. And this is what you see. And once
Mm.
you do that, then you guys are on the same page in terms of
Mm.
understanding what the problems are. And then once that page is set, the boundaries come in per person. And so when the boundaries are definitely set, it kind of goes like a guide. It's a guiding light to how far a person can and cannot go, and also how far a person is willing to go. And there's some behaviors behind that, of course, as well. Those behaviors of fear. Fear is usually, in my opinion, fear is something that's unknown. When you put fear into the light, then you know what it is. You know what you're facing, and now you can formulate a plan to put it together to move forward in a cohesive manner
Mm.
that's agreed upon with all parties, and then action is followed up behind it.
Mm. Yeah, thank you. It's so interesting listening to you talk because it really matches up with so much of our philosophy at Inheritance Project. I guess that's why we get along. Because in our 7 skills for difficult conversations, we also have 2 skills. One is called lead with curiosity. So always being open to
Mhm.
understanding the other person's point of view first and listening deeply, and then repeating and acknowledging what they shared. So repeating back what they
Mhm.
said not only makes them feel heard, but also avoids really common miscommunication. So often we listen to someone and think we hear one thing when they actually meant another. And so, just that simple step of repeating back and checking that you understood correctly can really save you so much time and unnecessary conflict by really making sure you're on the same page as you shared. And this conversation is titled "Intention versus Impact," and I know that you do a lot of amazing work coaching leaders on their language. And so I wanted to ask you, what's some common
Mm.
examples of communication or phrases or language that you hear in the workplace that may be used pretty often, but actually are having an unintended impact or potentially even a harmful impact on the community in the workplace?
So going back to the example of the boundaries, repeating what was said in a way that the person can understand it. When you're repeating what is said to get that comprehension, you can use inclusive language in that moment in time that lets that person know that not only do you hear them, but they're now included. And so oftentimes a lot of that language looks like, hey, I think we can do this together. What are your thoughts? What do you think? What is your perspective? and be open-minded about it. Now, on the flip side of that, there may be some who are not ready to fully acknowledge what the conversation was about. And a lot of those times, a lot of that language looks like, hey, we're all in this space together. You guys have also realized that you have the space to speak how you can express how you feel. You guys have been able to express your thoughts, right? We all come together. And in that moment, the person can think, well, yeah, there has been a time where I have been able to express my thoughts. I have been able to add value here in the workspace. But in reality, they haven't. This person hasn't been able, or at least hadn't felt comfortable enough to add that value. In my book, as an example, one of those behaviors that happens, my upcoming book, Perfect Progression, my characters in the book, they're centered around women, Marie, Mandy, Susan. They've developed certain disciplines of habits to try to overcome these different obstacles to show up for themselves in the book. But they've also run into the same sort of behavior that is, it looks inviting. It could sort of feel inviting, but in reality, it's not. Because once these conversations are done, they're going back to themselves in a different space where they're alone and really thinking about what just happened. Did I really feel included here? I'm not exactly sure what's going on. Well, maybe this person is just having a bad day. Maybe I'm overthinking it. Yeah, I don't know, and kind of brush it off. But that becomes a normal habit from the other person that's, hey, we're all included here. You can express your thoughts. We're in a space and a culture where all thoughts matter. Everyone's languages matter. Everyone can be included here. And so when that happens, people start to doubt themselves. They really think that in this work environment or in that open space that they have that space to really express how they feel. They have that space that's comfortable where they can add that value. But when they're behind closed doors or they're off alone doing whatever task they need to do by themselves, they really start to think and replay moments in time where there really hasn't been a space where they could actually share comfortably without feeling judgment or feeling ashamed or feeling that their input isn't valuable enough. Or either, they feel the eyes rolling in the back of their head and they can't see them, but they can definitely feel it. So a lot of that happens in the workplace, especially with individuals who do not feel included, but are given a perception that they are included. And that happens more often than we can even imagine or we can even recognize. It takes a real sense, a good sense of self-awareness and understanding your environment, your surroundings of what's really going on and not rationalize the crazy.
What I'm hearing is that all of us as humans, I think, may have this subconscious tendency or bias, which is to assume that other people's experiences are similar to your own. So as a leader, you may be in a certain position of authority or have a certain type of experience in your work environment. And perhaps you feel like the work environment is really inclusive or collaborative or whatever it is. But it's important to remember that that may not actually be the experience of all the people you work with, especially people who may be coming from different backgrounds or different contexts. And so what I am hearing as the practical takeaway for me is to check myself anytime I'm making an assumption that, oh, I feel this way, so everyone must feel comfortable with this situation, or everyone must feel like they're able to speak up, because that might not be true. And instead of leading with that assumption, which can have the impact that people, feel that if they feel differently to me as the leader, it's very hard to then speak up once that comment has been said or once that tone has been established. But instead, as a leader, leading with genuine curiosity and asking people really how do they actually feel, and being open to receive an answer or receive hard feedback that's different from how I perceive things. And It's sounds simple when you say it like that, but it can be, really challenging sometimes to
Absolutely.
make space for different experiences and perceptions that are different from your own. So I'm wondering how, what advice you have for leaders who maybe are now thinking or catching themselves like, oh, I've definitely done that in the past. What can we do to transform some of those habits? Because I think some of the intention behind it is to try and build a sense of connection. Like, oh, we all
Mhm.
feel this way. It's trying to perhaps build some sort of sense of cohesion in the group. But how can we do that without dismissing or pushing to the side other people's experiences? How can we actually invite in those different experiences and perspectives and be open to them?
I think the first thing you said was intention. That's the number one thing. What is your intention going into this conversation? What is it that you want to pull out of here? What do you want? I think a person has to really be honest with themselves and truthful when they're going into a conversation, whether it's a one on one development, whether it's a group meeting, whether it's a team meeting, a business meeting. What is it that you want out of this conversation? That's number one, the intention. Two, what is it that you want to give? Because there has to be an equal exchange of energy. And so if you want something, what are you willing to give? Are you willing to give your staff members or your leaders the space to give you the input that you're looking for that may not be an alignment with what your own personal thoughts are? Because I think a lot of times what happens is we can have great intentions, but in the process of going in with these great intentions and we're having these conversations, whatever is being said that's not in alignment with personal perspectives, it could kind of skew what's the real intent. And the real intent is to get past an obstacle. But in order to get
Mm,
past an obstacle, the person has to put aside their personal feelings. I can't stress that enough. And
mm,
I know there are many people on this live who's been in a situation in the workspace where everything starts out really great, but it ends up feeling awkward because this person has invited your input but is taken aback because the input is so direct. And I'm a very direct person, so I get it. But at the same time, for the person who's on the receiving end of that communication, who's on the receiving end of of the leaders coming in with their intention, when you're giving that input, what is your intention? Because again, the
mm,
equal exchange of energy is your intention to attack the leader with what you see all the issues that are happening, or is your intention to really come across as if you want to help solve the issues that are happening in the space? There has to be an equal exchange of energy on both sides of the coin here. That's the one
mm,
way we can all work together to move forward in solving the issue at hand and be okay with it's not going to happen today. All problems may not be solved overnight. They may not be solved in this moment, but they
mm,
can be. There is always a solution to every problem. It's all about finding it,
mm,
and it's all about working together to find it,
mm,
especially in the workplace.
mm, mm. Powerful words. And I would love to get a little more um, specific. So, if you do, you have any specific examples of phrases or turns of phrase that can be really effective at either, for leaders or people inviting feedback, really showing that you are open to receiving it? And secondly, for those, maybe giving hard feedback um, or feedback that you think the other person might not want to hear, how do you express that in a way that really aligns with your intention to serve the greatest good of the project or the team?
So it's a combination of things. Aside from just the words, it's also non-verbal cues. It is body language. Um, you have to be open. So when I'm doing speaking engagements in person and I have to speak with individuals, I usually speak with my hands open. My hands are open because I'm inviting others
Mm,
to come in. And so I understand in a meeting, in an office, you may not be able to speak with, your hands and standing in front of people open, but there are moments where you can. And even if you're sitting at a desk, you can sit with your shoulders back, your posture in front. You can look
mm,
inviting. You can have your people come in, invite, and also speak with you in a manner that feels comfortable because your body is showing them that, hey, I'm open, I'm willing, and I'm able to learn and understand your perspective. So, body language, nonverbal cues are extremely important in the
mm,
workspace because body language tells a lot about a person. The
mm,
second thing in this combo, tone of voice. Tone of
mm,
voice matters. A lot of people say it's not what you say, it's how you say it. Well, what you say matters as well, but your tone of voice even matters. So if you are speaking to a person in regards to a problem that's going on, for example, hey, Mallory, um, we noticed that the report that you provided us last week, it was low in numbers. Is there a reason why the numbers were low, or is there something I can do to assist you in helping this? Walk me through your process. How do you feel about where you are today? That tone of voice, I used a lighter tone in my voice because I wanted to be open and inviting. I didn't want to sound accusatory. I did not want to come across as if it is your fault. There's so many things that happens in our personal life that does move over into the professional space that we forget about. Maybe someone was late to work this morning and did not intend for that to happen, or maybe the kids didn't get out of the house on time, and so someone left their backpack at home. I know that happens. There's a lot of moms and dads out there, so I'm sure everyone understands the importance of children having to get out of the house on time. And it's frustrating when the children leave their stuff at home and we talk about it at home the night before. There's so many things that can happen. So the tone of voice in an office, in a team setting is so important because it sounds as though I'm not accusing you. I genuinely want to know, how can I help you? Especially
mm,
if the person has not had a history of giving reports that are not quality related or up to quality or up to
mm,
standard. So tone of voice definitely matters. And then what you say. So choosing words are again, it goes back to intention. What do you want to get out of this conversation? If you want to understand why, Mallory, your levels are, or your reports are not up to standard this week, want to be direct in that manner. How can I help you get your level, your reporting back into standard? What is it that I need to do to assist you? And in that moment, when you take the responsibility, leaders, when you take the responsibility, because your team is a reflection of your leadership, when you take the responsibility, it it creates the space of comfort because now you are telling your staff that, hey, if I could take responsibility, you could take responsibility. And in that moment, the staff member gets to replay what happened in the week that impacted their reporting that wasn't up to standard. And then you
mm,
can together formulate a plan
mm,
to move forward in a manner that's going to benefit not just you both, but the entire team and also the entire unit and even the company.
mm. Great reminder that communication is not just the words you choose, but how it's expressed. And I think I've heard some researcher statistic that I think it's 55% of communication is related to body language. Some
Mm-hmm.
other big percent, like 20 or 25, is related to tone. And the smallest segment of impact is actually the words you choose. I forget the exact details, but it's a really powerful reminder to be mindful of those things. And I think that the pausing and breathing really helps with that
Yeah.
too, especially if it's a situation where there's a lot at stake.
Yeah.
Maybe your bonus is on the line because of this report or your promotion or something. And when we have those, when there's a lot at stake, it's a lot easier for our nervous system to go into survival mode. Sometimes
Yes.
you may have heard of this, fight or flight, but essentially
Mm-hmm.
getting into a more activated state where in this state we actually lose access to our prefrontal cortex, which is the front part of our brain that actually
Yeah.
differentiates humans from all other mammals. And in that part of the brain is empathy,
Mm-hmm.
collaboration, creative problem solving. You said
Yeah.
every problem has a solution, but we have to have access to the part of our brain that can think creatively in order to do that. And it's very hard
Yes.
to do that when we're in a stressed out or survival state, which can often happen when situations feel high stakes, especially at work. It's connected to our livelihood, our ability to feed our families, and it's really natural that that may happen. So really important to keep cultivating that self-awareness and to have practices to help you notice what's happening in your body and help you regulate too.
You
And
know,
I
oh no, I'm sorry. With that, I know that there's moments where the intense conversation, you may not have a chance to actually stop and breathe. But
mm,
breathing in that process, breathing while it's happening helps out so much. And it's also okay to take a couple minutes to yourself. Take a break. Take
mm,
5 minutes. Gather yourself, come back, start again. It's okay to do that as
mm,
well. I wanted to get that in there. I'm sorry.
mm. Yeah, thank you. Well, I'm just looking at the comments and there are some really thoughtful comments and a question, which is, do any of the characters in your book reflect poor leadership? And if so, what progressive actions were taken to correct their behavior or help them evolve their leadership?
So in my book, right now there aren't any there is a specific character, and I'm gonna call her Mandy. She's one of the leaders in my book. She is vicious. She is very intense. I mean, as intense as a person can be. She's extremely intense, but in terms of improving her leadership skills, I think you guys would just have to read the book to figure out whether she improves it or not. But I can tell you, her inheritance has definitely shaped how she leads, what she speaks
Mm,
about, how she speaks, her tone of voice, her nonverbal cues. She's
mm,
pretty vicious, so she's a page turner. She's definitely going to make you all feel very intense. But the other women in the book, and there's also some men in there as well, because they play a very important role in the workspace. The other women also in the book, A. Marie, Susan, um, they learn a lot about themselves in the workspace and their leadership styles.
mm,
I do know that my
mm,
character, A. Marie, as she progresses on in her corporate space, in her workspace, she does make the attempts to improve who she is. She tries, but she has a different
mm,
perspective. And so with that
mm,
perspective, not and it happens in our current space, in our workspace, I have a different perspective of how I'm doing, and I'm looking at another peer or a mentor to help me improve my skills, but that mentor may have a different agenda, or that mentor may have a different perspective for me, and I'm just not aware because we didn't verbalize our communication. We didn't talk about it.
mm,
Instead, we wrote it down on a piece of paper, or in the workspace. In this particular case, we wrote it down on a one-on-one development document on how I can improve, rather than give me the tools, or at least provide opportunities for me to showcase where I have improved in a skill set, and then also what I can do to continue on improvement, and even give me new challenges. but it doesn't happen. A lot of the times it doesn't happen in the workspace. You have a one-on-one development time, and then from there, you just go on about your day, and you go on about the months, and then you come back in 3 months, and maybe you revisit it, maybe you don't. But I think you guys have to read the book to actually figure it out.
And when is the book coming out?
So we have a date scheduled for the beginning of November 2023 at the latest. So I don't have an official specific date yet, but that is what we're aiming for.
Amazing. And I think this is a perfect segue to actually talk a bit more about your work with women and why specifically you're so passionate about women's leadership and women's communication, and what led you to focus on that. And yeah, let's start with that.
Sure. So, women, we wear so many different hats. We're mothers, we're wives, we're sisters, we're teachers. Some of us are CEOs, some of us are executives, senior executives, directors of different departments. We volunteer. We do so much that sometimes we forget. Before I was an author, before I owned my own business, I was Stephany. And with the distractions of the everyday life, which happens, as a friend of mine would say, life keeps lifing. We forget to go back to who we were, or at least discover who we are. And so, my time in other spaces, in the nonprofit spaces, I really focused on helping women see who they are by helping them implement self-care practices. And these self-care practices started personal, but then it moved into the professional space. And so as it moved into the professional space, I helped them go back to their sense of origin, their sense of self. Who are you? Finding out who you are, and also where you've been. And it's okay that you've been where you've been and you are who you are, but you're here today. And so I really wanted to help women in their leadership skills, because in a leadership role, it has a lot of masculine energy, and we are feminine energy based, and vice versa. And using those different energies, we've forgotten that there needs to be a balance, and how to create that balance, because workloads are extreme. The environment, the work culture itself could be extreme, or our personal life could be extreme. We spend as much time at work as we do at home, and in some cases, vice versa, or more so than others. But creating that balance for yourself, and also creating that space for self care, because if you don't take care of yourself, if you don't take the steps needed to take care of yourself, your body will make you. And I've noticed, and I've spoken with many women, not even alone in the States, but also overseas, where I've done different webinars and I've done different coaching and consulting. I've spoken with many women where they've also talked about the illnesses that they've had because they've worked, and unable to put a boundary in place to say, hey, you know what? I need a few moments, or I can't show up today. We do have those 20% days. We're not going to always show up at our greatest self. But if we constantly push ourselves to be that person and to always get things done, our bodies are going to make us stop. So you have a choice. You can stop and take some time for yourself, or you're going to choose. And so, and also understand that they too are important, and so is self-care.
100%. I think we have an epidemic of burnout in the US, and I myself experienced it earlier this year. I got really sick and I needed to take a month off work or really doing anything in order to recover. And I really had to work through a lot of inherited beliefs in order to do that. But and I think a lot of the reasons why we end up in these cycles is because of what we've inherited, what we think we need to do to survive, and also the real realities of, you know, needing to make a living and survive in capitalism creates really understandable types of fears and stresses. And so I really love the work that you're doing, and I want to close out with a final few questions for you. So if you have any further questions for Stephany, please write them in the comments. And before we get to that, I do want to share a little bit about our upcoming inclusive leadership and conflict resolution program. And the reason why I'm really excited to share about this is exactly part of what you shared, Stephany, which is that we spend so much time at work, and the relationships that we have with our teammates, our leaders, our collaborators are a huge contributing factor to our mental health and our quality of life.
Yes.
And yet, so many of us, myself included, inherited really unproductive ways of interacting with those work relationships, avoiding conflict, not being able to set clear boundaries, being really afraid of challenging conversations, and not speaking up about harmful behaviors that actually have a negative impact on myself and others. And I've been through all of those kinds of cycles in my own life. And really, over the course of creating Inheritance Project over the last couple years with two other co-founders, we've had to work through a lot of our own challenges with how we work together, how we relate to each other, and deal with some really, really difficult conversations between us. And that process was the birthplace of this inclusive leadership and conflict resolution, which we've been doing for the last 2 years with leaders at organizations at some of the world's top companies. And now, for the first time, we are opening the doors and inviting anyone, no matter where you work, to the possibility of enrolling and learning some of the skills that we started talking about today. So if you were to join, let me see. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Stephany, let me know if you can see it, because I
I
can't
cannot
see
see your
anything
screen,
else when I'm
but
sharing.
nope,
Okay.
I can't see your screen.
What about now?
Oh,
Okay.
it's coming in.
If
Here we go.
Here we go. Okay, we
Perfect.
made it work. We are kicking off this program next week, although the first session isn't until September 22nd. So if you want to enroll, you still have time. And it will be a 10-week program that will focus on helping you work through a real life situation that you're dealing with. So maybe it is a conflict with one of your investors or co-founders, or a challenging, sticky situation with another member of your executive team, or a peer or a leader, or difficulty collaborating with people who work in other departments from you. Or maybe you're dealing with a challenging, ongoing, tense relationship with someone in your family or community. No matter what the situation is, over the course of these 10 weeks, you'll learn really practical skills and get exercises that you can do to start to transform that relationship. You'll be working through this particular situation and making real life progress on it, getting real coaching on it over the course of these 10 weeks. And also, the skills that you learn will serve you for the future. We are in a really intense time of transition. We were just talking about this before we started this interview. And AI, a lot of the challenges and changes in the economy, Like, all of this is making the human skills, the human side of work, more and more important. And yet so many of us never received any kind of formal training on how to lead, how to manage, how to relate to others at work or beyond. If we received any professional development, it was most likely technical skills training of some sort. And so this is really your opportunity to prepare yourself to lead through the challenges of the future. And those challenges will necessitate really hard conversations. So if you're someone who feels like you struggle with conflict or want to avoid it, or have a hard time advocating for your needs, or not sure how to address inequities or microaggressions at work, this program is for you. And you don't have to be going through all of these things alone. You get to join a community of other incredible leaders who are putting these skills and these tools into practice and transforming their relationships at work and beyond. And over the course of the 10 weeks, you'll learn our 7 skills for challenging conversations and really put them into practice. You'll apply them to a real life situation that you're working on and get coaching on it. You'll also receive a huge plethora of resources, scripts, exercises for you to do, which all focus around creating greater self-awareness and understanding your inheritance, how it's shaping your default patterns of conflict and communication, and understanding specific tools and techniques for transforming those default patterns. You'll also get to have a LinkedIn badge once you complete the program, and most importantly, become part of our greater community of evolutionaries, leaders who are committed to transforming their inherited patterns and being part of a future that we are creating together through the challenges of today. So if this sounds interesting to you, we are going to put the link to this page in the comments, and you're welcome to check it out. If you have any questions about it, I'm also really happy to connect with you. You can read more about the live virtual session. So it's all conducted over Zoom, including live workshops that are really interactive and immersive, as well as integration sessions where you get real coaching. And in between, you'll be logged on to our online learning portal where you'll get a huge variety of content and information, including breathwork practices to support you with regulating your nervous system in hard situations, self-reflection, and you'll also be assigned small group called a pod that will travel with you through the program. You'll exchange ideas and learning. So outside the bigger group, you'll get this really intimate connection with a few other amazing leaders who might come from different fields that you can learn from. So on this page, you can read more about the whole curriculum and all the details. And again, if you have any questions, please send me a message. I'd be happy to chat with you. And I do want to announce something really exciting, which is we've heard from a lot of you that you are excited and interested in this program, but the cost feels prohibitive now it's $1,980 for the 10 weeks, which is inclusive of so much and lifetime access to all the content, as well as a lot of one-on-one support. But if that feels like a stretch for you, we're really excited to offer a few partial scholarships for folks who identify as BIPOC or who work in the nonprofit or social impact space to take the course for $500. So if you identify in one of those groups and you're curious about the program, all you need to do is write me a message on LinkedIn saying why you're interested to take it and what the impact would be of learning these skills in your life and work that you want to do on the world. I'm going to pass it back to you, Stephany. I know you've also been a big supporter of this program. Is there anything else that you want to share about it?
Again, you've done a great job at covering a lot of it. I would encourage everyone, if you're really, really serious about wanting to make changes, big changes. And I say a lot of times to many people, if you want drastic changes, you're going to have to make drastic decisions. So make the choice, take the program. You will not be disappointed. The Inheritance Group, a group of great people, and they have a lot to offer. So I would definitely suggest that everyone see if you can qualify for the scholarship, but it is in your highest good to actually take the program and see how it could definitely impact your life personally and professionally.
Thanks, Stephany. And I want to close out with a final question for you, which is, if you could pass on one piece of wisdom or a lesson that you've learned in your life or leadership journey as your legacy for future generations, what would that piece of wisdom be?
Well, well, I would say that is clarity. I've been able to gain clarity on my own behaviors. So with the future generations, get some clarity about yourself, who you are, understand your behaviors, your behavior patterns. Once you're able to understand who you are, your behavior patterns, it helps you build your confidence in standing in your truth, standing in who you are, and also standing in uncomfortable spaces. And doing so will help you practice self care, that will help you create those definitive boundaries needed in your personal and professional life. And it also helps you guide yourself back to your origin of who you are. So that would be my advice I'd give.
Powerful. Connect to who you are and build that self-awareness about yourself. For those of you still listening, I'd love to hear in the comments what's one takeaway or insight that you received from this conversation that you are excited to remember or put into practice in your life. And while we receive those, Stephany, would you like to share what you're working on right now? If people were inspired by anything you shared, how can they connect with you? How can they reach you?
Absolutely. So, as we've said before, I am currently writing my book, Perfect Progression, and it will be published this year, early November. Also, you can find me on LinkedIn, my first and last name, Stephany Poe. I also have IG, Stephany Poe underscore POEELLC. And you can also go to my website, POEECC.com, and reach out. I'd love to connect with any and everyone. So if we are in alignment, let's align and let's move forward together. There's always a way to solve a problem. Progressive opportunities everywhere, every day.
Thank you so much. And Stephany, it would be amazing if you could, after we log off, write all your contact information in the comments of this event so people can reference that and have access to it, especially if they come back and watch the replay too. And for all of you who joined us, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for taking some time on your lunch break to learn how to be a better leader and to create environments that are more inclusive and where the people who you care for and work with are able to express their truth. It's a big shift in our collective in terms of the way that we're leading and coming together. And I'm really grateful that you're a part of it and that you're committed to evolving the way that you lead in this way. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you so much, Stephany, for generously sharing your wisdom and your insights with us. We really appreciate it. And we're so excited to stay connected. Looking forward to our next conversation, and have a beautiful rest of the day, everyone.